G'day, folks. It is your friendly neighborhood coach here, and we are back with a man by popular demand, the villain of Age of Sigmar. It is my Down Under Sigmar co-host, Liam, aka ShadowHammer. Liam, long time no speak. How are you, mate?
I am half asleep because this is 9:35 in the morning and it is really early for me. But I picked the time, so I can't complain.
Liam lives a hashtag blessed life, so 9:30 is early for Liam. We appreciate you getting up this early on a Sunday to talk all things Lumineth Realm Lords. But we're not just talking about any Lumineth Realm Lords, folks. We are talking about Battle Cattle. That's right. Hayden Walker took us through an episode not long ago that focused very much on the elf side of this particular book. And I want to do the other side. I want to talk more about the Battle Cattle. I want to talk more about that Stone Guard type of build. And then we can compare the two and see what works for you. So, Liam, I know you've been building a lot of lists. I know you and Ben Spinetti, a.k.a. four Shark Meta.
Shark Meta.
Ben, you guys have been talking a lot and building some pretty cool stone lists. So why did you start Lumineth Realm Lords? Because I know you're a Daughters of Cain player. You played with Feck. You've recently been playing with OBR. Why Lumineth? And then second question is why the Stone Boys compared to maybe more of the traditional elf, techless, wardens, Dawn Rider type build?
So one, why Lumineth? One, they're elves. That's a selling point for me. They're new elves, so they look pretty. The big thing for me with them is even though they're Hish, they're still elves, and they kind of got this cheeky thing when I wasn't really drawn to them at first. I think we've had a discussion at CanCon where I'm like, I'm not interested in that army. But then I started seeing cool color schemes on Twitter of people painting them in dark elf colors, and I was like, yep, that's what I'll do. I'll do dark elf colors with high elves. And it's really cool because they can ally in with Deepkin, and Deepkin can ally in with Daughters. So I can just kind of merge all my armies into one in a narrative aspect. And so I can kind of do this cool, great elf nation color scheme, which I'm working on my Daughters. So then they would look sick with the whole oxide, lead belcher, non-oil oxide kind of look that I'm doing. So I think they would look really cool on that. So that's kind of why I was drawn into them and just picked them dark elves and with dark colors.
Because I know you and I have talked a lot about the shadow elves. We talked more about Malekith, Malarian. I can't remember which is the old name, which is the new name. I always get confused. But we talked a lot about the shadow elves and the elves of Ulgu when they eventually come, and even when Adepticon had those pretty sweet reveals of the shadow elf aesthetic from Underworlds, I want to say, or Warcry. Yeah, that was I'm like, yep, that's Liam 100%. And you've been building OBR, and then all of a sudden you just come out of nowhere and you're like, yep, I'm going to do Lumineth, which kind of surprised me, to be honest. I put up my hand straight away and said, no, I'm going to do Gargant, so it's not the army for me. But what drew you to the book? So I know you got the synergies between your armies, the Deepkin, your Daughters of Cain, the elf aesthetic in general. What about the way the army plays?
So it wasn't really the army plays. It was more how the mountain guys play, if that makes sense. They're a very me army. They don't die. They are durable and they're a pain. And we'll explain that more when we explain rules, but they're very my play style.
You are a pain. You are an absolute pain. So I can see that working quite well.
So they're very my kind of vibe, if that makes sense. They remind me a bit of Sylvaneth, where old school Sylvaneth, where you have an undying tree lord. A tree lord that just won't die and everyone's just I've had it, and they've raged. This is the army where they literally do the exact same thing as old school Sylvaneth. They don't teleport, but they don't die. So that's why I've kind of leaned towards them, because it wasn't more the normal elves, it was more the mountain guys that really got me into it. And I'm really interested to see what they do with the other elements, because they're in the book, it actually shows you that the mountain guys is the first step of the actual elements of Hish, because we got air, fire and stuff coming out. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there. But that's
I imagine they all combine, and Teclis is Captain Planet, or Tyrion is Captain Planet. We summon him, and
I think Tyrion is air. I have a funny feeling Tyrion is the air side. It wouldn't surprise me. Because I think, hang on, give me a second. They actually, in this book, they actually show us what might be next in order. Because it's kind of, they copied what the Stormcast book did. Which was really clever. But I'm pretty sure it's the air that's next after this. Don't quote me on this YouTube. I just want to double check.
While Liam looks at his book, this out of the moment book, I think for me, the Lumineth.
It's River.
So
River is next. Okay. So we got mountain, river, wind, and zenith. I have no idea what zenith means.
So, like when you zenith highlight, when you prime zenith, you're doing it. You're working off the light source of and you're creating that shadow. So maybe the next elf god that comes in is a zenith highlighting god. Duncan has reemerged. I don't know, or somebody.
If they make a Duncan model out of that, I'll be in love.
Duncan's left Games Workshop, so that's not going to happen. But we are completely sidetracking from the Lumineth Realm Lords.
But yes,
for me, beautiful models, interesting game style. I think, especially when you go the elf side, and again, Hayden and I talked about this, about the way that the kind of the sentinels and the wardens work, and if you watch 300 and you watch that defensive stance of slowly moving your way up the board, pushing your opponent back, that type of just build. If you are really inspired by 300 and that Spartan aesthetic, I think that for me is where the elf is kind of almost emerged to the old Warhammer Fantasy Dwarves. They were the super defensive, slow-moving army that the elves were never known for. I think they bring a beautiful style. I think the 3-inch pikes is interesting, but the battle cattle with some of the rules that we've talked about is pretty crazy. I think they're going to catch people off guard for the first time because there's very little around in the game that does what these guys are going to do.
Yeah. Also, you just brought up like 300 stuff. Do you remember like Lord of the Rings scene with like the high elves come into battle and they just slice everyone? They have their shields and they just go like an all perfect sync. They're just like completely. Mm-hmm. That's literally Lumineth. But anyone who wants to know, just watch that scene. I think it's actually Battle of Helm's Deep where they're like doing that. So watch that movie and watch
shields
that.
In it. Yeah.
That's Lumineth in one scene. But yeah, they're really cool. And yeah, the Battle Cattle army is by far the most different out of the normal elves. They stand out to me. So one of the key rules that they have is they ignore Rend 1 through doing a battle stance.
So that's just regardless of which great nation you take, you've got this battle stance rule.
Yep. So you get this thing called Enduring as a Rock, and you've got the mountain stance, and you ignore Rend 1. So you ignore Rend 1 turns into Rend 0. Yeah, Rend 0. And then they have this other cool rule, which is Tectonic Force, which I think is really different. I would say it's up there as one of the ones that's probably going to catch people by surprise the most. So pretty much at the end of the combat phase, pick one enemy unit within a mountain elf unit. And pretty much that unit must move 2 inches away from the mountain unit, like mountain elf unit, Alarith unit. They're called Alarith. So, and it's just like early in the morning, so saying Alarith so many times is like speaking a different language. And then they must finish that move more than 1 inch away from the Alarith unit. And then after they do that, any friendly Alarith units within 3 inches of enemy units can make a 1 inch pile-in. So a cool tactic that you can do this with, if someone is like blocking you for an objective, you charge in, do some damage, then they have to move 2 inches out, and then you move 1 inch following them. So you just follow them. Like it's pretty much just like pushing them forward and you just like following it. So it's kind of like just pretty much slowly pushing to the edge of the battle. And you pretty much get within the 6 inches of the objective.
Can you fight after that additional piling? So obviously, you fight in combat. No. At the end of combat, Teutonic Force comes in. You push me back a couple of inches. You push me back 2 inches. You then move forward an inch. I imagine again, like 300, like the elves that you talked about in Lord of the Rings. They kind of push you back and then slowly advance up the board. It doesn't mean that you can then attack next. It's more that you're just advancing 1 inch as an additional pile-in.
It's advancing in its movement that they need, especially the mountain guys, because they are slow.
I only ask this because people might assume that pile-in equals pile-in and attack. But the answer is no. Pile-in is just an advanced move at the end of combat when you use Teutonic Force?
Yeah, so for anyone who's new and they're like getting into Lumineth, so if there's a rule that says pile in, it just means move. If it says pile in attack, it means move, then roll some dice. So that's the best way to describe it. GW is pretty good at differentiating them, being like, hey, do this instead of that. So it's just for anyone who's new and wants to know.
Yeah, I only raise that because most people's experience with pile-in is when it's in the combat phase, when you pile in an attack. So that's most people's experience, so that they may assume, and then destruction players know this because the old destruction rules allowed you to pile in, but not necessarily attack.
Cool. Which
okay.
still made no sense to me.
That makes no sense, but this is not the Destruction Grand Alliance show. This is the Lumineth show. So you've got Teutonic Forces, which are going to push your enemy back at the end of combat. You're going to be able to ignore Rend -1 across the board for all of your is it the Alarith, or is it a particular unit that gets to ignore Rend?
So Alarith units, so that is your cows, your Stone Guard, and your Stone Maid. So it's just three units.
So not the elves, not the Wardens, not the Sentinels, not the Dawn Riders. It's the Alarith keyworded units.
Yeah. Anyone who is connected to the mountain, lore-wise, is getting this rule. And if you do have the book, if you have got it, read. Actually, like I literally read the mountain like lore guys, and they have you have a lot of respect for these elves because these elves are like devoted to that element, which is cool.
I respect no elves, by the way, but you can respect them all you want. Hashtag respect.
Okay, but you're a Cities of Sigmar player whose most of his war scrolls on his list are elves, so don't know how I say about that. So
I'm playing with more elves. I'm playing with Dreadlords or Black Dragons and Drakespawn Knights at the moment, but this is not that show. All right, so you've got a couple of lists for me. You've talked about why they're great and why people should consider that. Anything you want to add before I bring up your first list? And you have given me 3 lists, so I'm keen to see how you're building around the Alarith rule set.
So pretty much, if you decide not to do a Great Nation, there is 3 traits and 3 artifacts. You can actually, if you take a battalion, you can take the artifacts. But 3 quick traits, I'm just going to run them by real quick because they're super quick and easy.
Yeah, that's cool.
There's Majestic. Add 1 to Bravery characteristic of friendly Realm Lord units, whole even 12. Subtract 1 from Bravery characteristics of enemy units. So that's a Bravery, debuff, and buff. Enduring, add 3 to the General's rune characteristic. Number 3 is Lawmaster. If the General is a wizard, they know 1 extra spell from the Law of High Peaks. So those are the 3 ones. The artifacts are Hearthstone Amulet. Roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or a mortal wound onto the bearer. On a 5-up, that wound or mortal wound is negated. Ebony Stone. Each time this bearer is affected by a spell or an endless spell, you can roll a dice on a 4-up. They ignore that effects. And then Magmic Hammer. If the bearer is a wizard, add 1 to the number of mortal wounds inflicted by arcane bolts by the caster. So just 3 artifacts, 3 command traits, similar to what if you watched Hayden's video, there are 3 scenarii, command traits, and artifacts. So yeah, that's
sweet. And it might be worth calling out something that we discussed offline that surprised me. I don't have the book, so it kind of caught me off guard, is that the named Mountain King. So I know that you've got this named character and there's no named character. Because I think when we were talking offline, Liam, I'm like, I wouldn't mind building a what's it called?
Just call it the Spirit of the Mountain. That's the best way.
Spirit of the Mountain. I'm like, cool. I might build a Spirit of the Mountain, and maybe tap into the Lore of Stone, where the Alarith can take Enduring and get +3 wound characteristics. But turns out the Stone of the Mountain is not a hero. It's only the named character is the hero. So that kind of surprised me. So little trick for you all, especially for anyone who doesn't have the Battle Tome like me.
Yeah, but to give you an idea though, your Stone Mages, which we'll get into, add 3 to the wound characteristic of it is amazing. Like 3 wounds is super strong. Like that is
the things that I would do to get +3 wounds on a Knight Incantor, on a a generic 5 or 6 wound hero, to then bring that up to 8 or 9. It means that there's so many things that can do 5 damage, or you can kill a character pretty easily with a couple of chip damage. So that's a good little thing. I like Enduring.
It's good. It is like when I saw that, I was like, that's a clearly good option. But then when you read the Ameritra, the great nation that I can't pronounce, that sounds America, you kind of want to go that way. So yeah,
Umetrica. I'm going to make sure that I say it correctly, because the last show that we did, Liam, I got stung by calling Staliac Lords the Staunch Lords, and people got upset with me. So Umetrica. So all three of Liam's lists are Umetrica. So I'm going to bring up the first one, Liam, and let's talk about the Umetrica and your unit choices and why you chose what you chose. And I might ask you a couple of questions. So for the people joining at home with the podcast, we are Lumineth Realm Lords of Legions. We are Great Nation of Umetrica. So what does Umetrica bring to the table first?
Okay, the coolest thing about it is their inbuilt ability. So as we talked about earlier, these guys ignore Rend 1 if they're in the mountain stance. When you're in Umetrica, you actually ignore Rend 2 when you're in the mountain stance.
So does that mean that if I had Rend -3, does that mean that it counts only at Rend -1? Or how does that Rend -1, Rend -2 work?
So pretty much, if you're at Rend -1, it goes down to 0. If you're at Rend -2, it goes down to 0. If you're at Rend -3, you are at Rend -3.
So if I'm Alarith and I'm not Umetrica, if someone attacks me at Rend -1, I basically ignore it. So I just roll that my armor save as it is on the war scroll.
Yep.
If I'm in Umetrica, if Rend -1 or Rend -2 attacks me, then again I roll the same save roll as per my war scroll. If it's Rend -3, Rend -4, or anything like Rend -5, that would then be applied as normal, because Umetrica only ignores -1 and -2. Correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Cool. Just I've seen a little bit of confusion here with this particular point. It's not that it reduces it by 2, but it means that you ignore Rend -1 or -2, depending if you're Umetrica or not.
Yeah, exactly. It's just this rule, it just makes them so much more durable, and which will explain why when we look for the list. So pretty much the command ability. So you get to use the tectonic force rule twice on a unit. So if a unit is stuck by 2 enemy units, because the rule says you have to pick 1, you can spend 1 CP and move 2. So that there is really cool. Like, I think that one there will be super helpful at like gripping moments in the game where you're trying to get all those objectives.
Well, if you think about it, right, you've got an objective that, traditionally has 6 inches of circumference that you can tap into, right? Or 12 inches if you work the full ratio. If you're able to get onto half of that objective and then push people off, and if there's a couple of rounds of combat and you keep pushing people off, regardless if it's 60 grots or a unit of 5 or 1 model, you're going to be able to move them away from scoring opportunities from that ability. I think Teutonic Force is one that is going to catch people off, because it means that you really need to take up the whole of the space of the objective, so that when you get pushed off, you still have more bodies as you keep pushed off.
Yeah, and currently with the new scenarios, from what I've been looking at and reading and playing, there are so many objectives where it's going to be really hard for the list to do that. Yeah. So you will see people just lose objectives because of that move. So
especially because probably like some of the new one has more objectives, and you get bonus points for having battle line and things like that. So I think people are building more units, so they're going with smaller unit sizes. So the big hordes might drop off. So it means that you're going to be pushed off, and I think that's going to be an interesting tactic. Keep that in mind. Think about that when you play anything that has Teutonic Force, because you're going to need to really dominate the objective, so that when you get pushed back, you're still scoring along the way.
Yeah, I can already see people raging at me about it, so I cannot wait.
That's all right. Gargants are meant to be able to move an objective, so you can push me off, but I'll just move it. But sorry, continue. Command trait.
Please don't do that. Anyways, so the command trait that you have to take is Almighty Blow. So when this general fights, instead of piling and attacking you pick 1 enemy unit within 1 inch of this general. On a 2-up, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. So it's really good on stone mages or just wizards in general, because they're super swingy. D3 attacks, D3 damage, 3/3s. You may as well go for the 2-up and just do D3 damage. Like, it makes way more sense, in my opinion. Like, just going, cool, yep, done. Save your hassle of rolling the dice and then only doing like nothing. So
yeah, it's such a swing for anyone who swings with a battle mage or any type of generic wizard. knows that it's just like a 50-50 chance of even doing anything.
Yeah, which they've kind of done on purpose because they're not supposed to fight, but yeah. And then the artifact of power, so pick one of the bearer's melee weapons. Once per battle, you can add 1 to the damage inflicted by attack made with that weapon. In addition, roll a dice each time you allocate a wound or a mortal wound to the bearer. On a 6, that wound or mortal wound is negated. In addition, each time a bearer is affected by a spell or an endless spell, on a 5-up, they ignore the effects of the spell of the bearer. Super good. And as you can see here, I did not give that to my general.
All right, well, we haven't got to the list yet, so let's talk about the list. So, again, for people playing at home with the podcast, we're starting off with a Stone Mage or Alarith Stone Mage. Liam also has a second Stone Mage. He also has the Stone King, so the Stoneheart King, as I knock over my mouse, and the Light of Atharian. So let's go from the top. You've got your General Stone Mage, which is coming away with Almighty Blow as the command trait. The artifact is the Hearthstone Amulet, and the Lore of the High Peak spell as Entomb. So talk me through this. What does it all do? How does it all come together?
Okay, so pretty much Almighty Blow, 2-up, do D3 damage. Hearthstone Amulet is ignoring stuff on a 5-up, like mortal wounds and wounds on a 5-up to make him a bit more durable. The reason why I didn't give him the Mountains gift was because he's not going to use his melee weapon, so there's no point of having a once per battle melee weapon onto a guy that's only going to do a 2-up, do D3 mortal wounds. It makes no sense to me. So you may as well give him something that makes him more durable and then make him do a little bit of damage. Entomb is a spell that I think is up there as one of the best in the book. Casting value is 7. Pick one enemy model within 18 inches of the caster. Roll a dice. If the roll is greater than the wound's characteristic, that model is slain. So pretty much if someone's lined up a whole bunch of like Clan Rats or Phoenix Guard or whatever, pick one of them, pop them out, and then leave them and then let them do Battle Shock and they remove half the unit.
So it's similar to the Gaze of Marathi, obviously a different way of doing it, but you essentially can pick out, if you're talking about Mortek Guard, you can pop out that, what's the leader of a Mortek Guard?
The Hecatos.
The Hecatos, if you want to pull out the Hecatos, you want to pull out a banner person or a musician or a champion. If you want to pull out, again, breaking people's coherency and stopping them from piling in, that's rather brutal.
Yeah, so if you do, let's just say with OBR, since they're super strong still, take the Hecatos out, then you charge them in, and they can't reroll their saves anymore because the Hecatos is the one that makes them reroll saves.
Yeah, it's the unit champion it's not a real champion, but the unit leader is the one that has the discipline point, so you can stop them from putting up their shield. So, and that'll become more popular, right? Again, even just removing a banner would stop someone getting, +1 bravery or being able to run and charge if it's a musician or whatever, like the different unit abilities are or maybe even like they might have a weapon that does mortal wounds, for the unit champion or, like a whatever. Like there's so many uses for that type of thing.
Like, as you said, like, for example, Daughters, if you take out the Hornblower, you make them stop running and charging. Like, you just completely stopped, like, the biggest threat in Daughters of Cain, just being like, cool, don't do that. And it's within 18 inches. So pretty much if you're 18 inches away, take the Hornblower out. Hopefully they're within 18, and all they can do is move 6 and then charge 2d6. So they literally have to be perfect 12 to do so.
Yeah. So
yeah, it's such a good spell. It's even as casting value is 7, but there is a way to buff it. But yeah, that's the one spell for the general, and then for the second one, I chose Grippling Vertigo as my spell.
And it has the second Stone Mage also has the artifact of Mountain's Gift.
Yeah, so he's ignoring stuff. So both my Stone Mages are hard to kill. I've done that on purpose for one particular reason, which I'll explain very soon when we explain the synergy. But Crippling Vertigo has a casting value of 6. It successfully casts, pick one enemy unit wholly within 18 of the caster, invisible to them until your next hero phase. Roll 2d6 before that unit makes a normal move, a charge move, or a pile-in move. If the roll is greater than that unit's bravery characteristic, it cannot make the move. Stop people charging, stop people moving, stop people piling in. Like, it's too good. Like,
it's brutal. I mean, it's similar rule to, like, is it Be'lakor has a similar type of rule, although it doesn't stop you from casting spells, and there's some other things, but being able to stop your opponent from moving, piling in, or charging, especially with combination of the pushback from the Teutonic Was it the Teutonic, whatever?
Yeah, Teutonic Force.
Yeah. Teutonic Force. Like when you combine that, right? You got someone in an objective, you're going to do some combat, you then push them off the objective. You've also cast that spell so they can't pile in, or they can't move again. That can be a brutal little combination again that can be the difference of winning and losing a game, or stopping someone from setting up that perfect charge, or body blocking their elite damage dealing units because they can't get this screen out of the way because you've stopped them from moving.
Yeah, it's just brutal. And also, so while we're also with the Stone Mages, quickly, so we'll just quickly run by what the Stone Mages both do.
Yeah,
so
tell me why you've got 2 Stone Mages.
It's literally for one. There's 2 things. So the first thing is their built-in one. So at the start of the combat phase, you can save that this model will adopt the Stone Mage stance. If you do so, this model and any friendly ally Stone Guard units wholly within 12 of this model cannot make a pile-in move in that phase. However, until the end of that phase, improve the rend characteristic of their melee weapons used by those units by 1. Stone Guard have built-in rend 1, so you just made them rend 2.
So by sacrificing my movement, so basically these Stone Mages are both buff pieces that they're going to buff up your Stone Guard. So you position them quite well where, you've got a Stone Mage supporting a Stone Guard. When they're about to get into combat, you sacrifice the movement of the Stone Mage. And in order, when you've sacrificed that, much like the Dewada and Warden King, you then give the benefit of giving the Stone Guard, instead of having Rend 1, you've moved them into Rend 2 territory. Is that right?
Yeah, so you make them Rend 2, because we'll explain quick. Is it okay if we explain quickly what Stone Guard can do?
Yeah, that's fine.
So Stone Guard have 4-inch move. They got 2 wounds each. So that unit of 15, for anyone in the podcast, I have a unit of 15 of them. So that's 30 wounds right there. 4-up save. And by the way, these guys are ignoring Rend 2. So they're just hard to shift.
And they're ignoring Rend 2 because of Eumetrica. So outside of Eumetrica, they're ignoring Rend 1, but because this list is Eumetrica, they're ignoring Rend 2. And then with combination of the Stone Mage, they're dealing Rend -2.
So they got 2 attacks each, 3s and 3s, -1 damage. Now, you have 2 choices of weapons. You can either do Stone Mallet or Diamond Pick Hammer. So with the Stone Mallet, is any hit rolls, unmodified hit rolls of a 6, add 1 to damage inflicted for any attacks that are successful. So like if you're getting 6s, separate them because they're going to be doing 2 damage. So Rend 2, 2 damage. And then Diamond Pick Hammer, if an unmodified hit roll for an attack made with a Diamond Pick Hammer is a 6, they inflict 1 mortal wound to the target. So you can either go mortal wounds or doing
damage.
Double damage. Yeah. So they are, for 100 points, they're good.
They're exceptional. They're exceptional for 100 points. And I think it's nice, right? You've got your mallets that are going to be good for you clearing hordes and screens. And then you've got the diamond picks to do damage to things like elite units, things that have really high armor saves, and doing those mortal wounds. It's a chip away at those type of things. So you got a little bit of flexibility there.
So for anyone the podcasters, so just so you know, I have 15 Ella Stone Guards with Stone Mallets because that extra damage is really good against something like OBR. OBR is a perfect example where they're so hard to shift. And then you got the 10 Ella Stone Guards with Diamond Pick Hammers, and then I got 5 Stone Guard with Stone Mallets, and then I got 30 Wardens, but we won't talk about the Wardens really much because Hayden did a good job. But
we'll talk about why you brought the elves into this particular list. But we're kind of now putting the synergy together on where the Stone Mage and the Stone Guards are starting to combine in order to provide additional rend, as well as the unbinding and the casting and they've got the survivability from their artifacts and some of the stuff they do with their spells. So we're already starting to see synergy coming together between the Stone Guard and the Stone Mage.
Now, another reason why you take 2 Stone Mages is for this one particular thing here. So if you have Battle Cows, 1 or 2, or if you're Ben Spinetti, 4, they actually have this one really cool rule. So where the Stone Mages help the Stoneheart King and the Battle Cows. So they have this rule called the Stone Mage Symbiosis. When you look at the value of the model damage table, so the Battle Cow's damage table, If this model is within 12 inches of a friendly stone mage, that model is treated as if it has suffered 0 wounds.
So you're keeping it at full potential. So you
whole way through.
Yeah.
So you have 2. So you have like a battle cow going off one end with a stone mage and some stone guard following them. And then you have another stone mage following another unit of stone guard going over there to help them buff up as well.
So you're almost creating like a trio, right? You're creating the stone mage, the spirit of the mountain, and the stone guard, or you're having at least power pairs where you're having the stone mage and the stone guard.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to scroll down quickly, just all the end, so people understand why I've taken mainly all stone guards, because I've taken a battalion called the Alarith Temple. So quickly, what's on here, and then we can start talking about the big cow dude because he's awesome. The units that are in this battalion are the Stoneheart King, 1 Stone Mage, and 1 to 3 units of Stone Guard. So the second Stone Mage is not in that battalion.
So this is a 3-drop, 4-drop.
So you got the battalion, you got Stone Mage, and then you got the Wardens, and then you got the Eltharion. So you got 4.
Yeah, it's 4-drop. Yeah.
4-drop list. And just to quickly let people know why I've taken this battalion, because it's for 120 points. It's too good. So at the start of the combat phase, any friendly Stone Guard units from this battalion that are wholly within 12 of the friendly hero from the same battalion. So the Stoneheart King and the Mountain. The like as in like Stone Mage. The actual other dude is not a hero.
Yeah. And we talked about that offline. Of the spirit of the mountain isn't a hero, but your hero, the named character, what's his name? Avalon. Avalandor, yeah. Avalandor is the named hero version. The spirit, the spirit of the mountain is a behemoth, not a hero. So the unnamed character is just a monster as opposed to a hero.
Now you can so with wholly within 12 inches, you can turn them into stone. So pretty much you can reroll saves for attacks that target a unit that have turned its skin to stone, but models in that unit that has turned their skin to stone can only move 1 inch pile in. So
what's the weapons range on the mace and the
1 inch?
Okay.
1 inch. So you have to roll some good charges to get a whole bunch in, because you're not going to pile in.
Yeah.
That's not going to pile in. But what you will be doing is having ignoring Ren 2, re-rolling their saves, and then, by the way, these aren't spending command points. Like, you have command points up the wazoo. These are just internal buffs within the whole army.
Yeah, this is just the ability that comes from the battalion.
Yeah. For 120 points.
So they can re-roll their saves. And what's their regular save at the moment anyway?
4 up.
So they're on a 4-up save. Outside of Eumetrica, they are ignoring Rend 1. Inside Eumetrica, they're ignoring Rend -2. So they're a 4-up armor save, ignoring up to Rend -2. And under the battalion, they are also re-rolling their saves. So a 4+ save is already 50-50. We then ignoring Rend, so we're keeping that save at a 50-50, and then I can re-roll. So there's a strong likelihood that you're probably going to save 75% of your damage within that Rend -1 or Rend -2 barrier. That's crazy. That's crazy good. No wonder you've gone balls to the wall with the stone guard under the temple.
Yep. And to give you an idea, guys, stone guard aren't battle line for Lumineth, only in this nation.
Yes, cool. So they're meeting your battle line requirements. I think it's only the wardens that are your flat out battle line in Lumineth. Obviously, for every 1 warden, you can take 1 sentinel. That counts as battle line. But under Eumetrica, the stone guard are your battle line. So you have 4 battle line choices here. Your 15, your 10, your 5 stone guards, and then your 30 wardens.
Yep. And the reason why I've gone 3 separate units and not doing just 2, like 2 stone mallets and 2 with the diamond pick, the little 5 is to stay back on objectives and stuff, just to hold the line, because as we just said, they are durable. Like, they will, like, if someone comes in and tries to take it, you go, cool, we got it. So yeah.
Before we go to the named king, just a quick question. in the battalion, it says that you can take one stone mage. Are you putting the general in the battalion, or are you putting the regular? Okay, why?
Putting the general. One, it's easier to remember. And two, because to give you an idea, he will be the one the general, honestly, will be following the Stoneheart King. But part of me, he will be following the Stoneheart King. I could actually, the thing is, all right, so I could do the normal Stone Mage onto the battalion and then have the Stoneheart King. Because the thing is, I would have scratch that. I would have the normal Stoneheart, the Stone Mage King, the Stone Mage one that's not the general, he'll follow the Stoneheart King. Because the Stoneheart King's a hero, so he'll give the reroll save buff.
Yes.
While the other one will go to the other unit of Stone Guard that will give them the reroll save buff. Does that make sense?
Yeah, look, it might be something you play around with. I thought I'd ask you the question in case our listeners are thinking, which of the Stone Mages do I put in the battalion? And is there a clear benefit in doing one or the other? So maybe it's something we're going to play around with. Yeah. Okay, so simplicity as opposed to an additional benefit that comes through it.
Yeah. Now we can talk about the Stoneheart King and understanding why you pick him over.
Yeah, I want the Stoneheart King. I want to hear about your Stoneheart King and Eltharion.
Okay, so Stoneheart King, as we said, he is a hero, so he actually gets a huge buff in that battalion. I think he's only like a 20-point difference. I'm gonna double check. I think there's hardly any points. So
the Spirit of the Mountain, I believe, is 340, and he's 360. Yeah, so it's 20 points for a hero.
Yeah, 20 points for a hero that they have very similar, how to describe it, similar rules. But the couple things that they have differently is Elder Wisdom. So if he's within 6 inches of a Lumineth Realm Lords hero, at the start of the next hero phase after that, that hero can spend any of their command abilities without spending a command point. And since he's always within himself, he uses his command point for free. And his command ability is pick D3 units of Alarith elf units, wholly within 24 of the friendly model with this command ability, add 1 to the attack characteristic of them. So having that for free the whole time after turn 2 onwards is super good. His is wholly within 24, while the normal one is wholly within 18. So you got more space with that. The normal Spirit of the Mountain is only 12 wounds. He is 14.
So you get a couple of extra wounds from going the hero version.
Yep. And then I think they don't have... So I'm just going... Because they all have very similar rules, but also they don't. Here we go. So he has all but immovable. So if this model does not make a charge move in your charge phase, add 1 to the attack characteristic of this melee weapon. So if he gets charged at, he's going to be angry.
Is this for both of them, or is this the named character?
No, this is just the named character.
Okay, this is the named character.
Yep. For his hammers, because this is the guy with the 2 hammers. If the unmodified hit roll for an attack made with this 5 hammers is a 6, the attack inflicts 1 mortal wound on the target in addition to any normal damage. So for anyone who is listening at home and they don't have the book, this guy here, he's got a missile weapon. They both have a missile weapon called a geometric blast. Starts at 30-inch range and goes down to 10. It's 1 attack. It goes to hit 3s, to wound 2s, -2 rend, d6 damage. Pretty good missile weapon.
Yeah.
His 5 steel hammers is 2-inch range, 6 attacks, 3s, -1, 5 damage. Cloven hooves is 1-inch range, 2 attacks, 3s, -1, 2 damage. So if he has not been charged, you add 1 to attack characteristic for all these melee weapons. So that's both the hammers and the hooves. The normal Spirit of the Mountain, he has the Stoneheart World Hammer. So it's the 2-handed hammer.
Yeah.
It's got only 4 attacks, 3s to hit, 2s to wound, -2, 5 damage. Statistically, Avalor is better just from that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's probably very little reason that you wouldn't take the named as opposed to the regular spirit, with the exception that you've already got too many hero slots taken up, or I don't know. I'm struggling to see why.
Or you want multiple battle cows, like.
Of course, but again, yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, it's a named character. You can only have one. I'm thinking like, why? I'm thinking, why wouldn't I take 2? But of course, it is a named character. Unlike that fake Durthu, that is just the spirit of Durthu, and you can have many Durthus. But
yes.
So cool. Okay, that makes sense. Gotcha.
And then he's got Guardian of Hitch, so subtract 1 from hit rolls attack made by enemy from this. The range of the Guardian Hitch ability is within shown. So if you're within 12 inches of him, you subtract 1 from hit rolls for enemy units.
Okay, so he's ignoring Rend or ignoring Rend 1. He's
ignoring Rend 2 because he's got the keyword Alarith.
Yeah, I was going to say then in Metrica, he's ignoring Rend 2. He's now minusing 1 to hit. He's brutal. He's a brutal, and obviously he's being rewarded by accepting a charge as opposed to charging. So some beautiful things coming out of this Stoneheart King.
Now, just to remind everyone, this guy has a 3-up save,
and is also in the battalion, so he's going to be able to take advantage. Can he take advantage of the battalion rules? No, that's only the Stone Guard.
Battalion rules for the Stoneheart.
Yes. So he can activate it, but he can't receive it.
Yes, but he does get given Aether Quartz, so he can actually use the Aether Quartz to re-roll it if he needs to once per battle.
Did we talk about Aether Quartz? I don't think we have talked about Aether Quartz yet, have we?
No, but if people have watched Hayden's show, did you guys talk about Aether Quartz?
Yeah, so very, very, very much at a high level, folks. If you haven't watched the Hayden episode, Lumineth Realm Lords get an additional resource. So you obviously get your command points, but you've also got this additional resource called Aether Quartz Reserve. Aether Quartz Reserve is generated by which units get Aether Quartz? Is it everyone?
Anyone. Let's just grab it quickly. I'm pretty sure it's everyone gets one. They get 1 Aether Quartz to spend.
Yeah. So while Liam looks up that rule, basically what happens is after you use the Aether Quartz, that unit suffers -1 to their bravery for the rest of the game. There are some ways to manipulate that and even to pass it back onto your opponent. Again, we talked about it in the Hayden episode. But when you've spent the Aether Quartz, there are some benefits you can get, either +1 to hit for attacks made in the phase, +1 to saves in shooting or combat. You can re-roll a cast, or you can cast an extra spell. So there's 4 different options to burn with the Aether Quartz.
So there's 4 options. So you get 1 in Aether Quartz Reserve once per phase. You can say, I've spent that Aether Quartz from the following abilities. So add 1 to save rolls. Add 1 to hit rolls, add 1 to casting, and cast 1 extra spell. Yeah. So you can actually get him if you're really desperate and you think he might be in trouble. You can literally be like, cool, he's going to be on a 2-up save, and ignoring Rend 2.
So every unit is going to get a single Aether Quartz. Once you've used it, you've used it. And once per phase, you can use an Aether Quartz. So, you've got 6, 8 units, something like that. You should have 8 Aether Quartz reserves to be able to burn throughout the game.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And then Light of Atharian. I want to know about the Light of Atharian. Why? He's not Battle Cattle. So why is he in the list?
He's not. Because he's stupid, but good. Like, his rules are good for 220 points. He has a 3-up save that ignores all Rend. So I think there's a common theme here that I like ignoring Rend.
You should play Nighthawk.
No, I'm good because they're 4-up save and they can't re-roll it. So no.
All right. So Light of Atharian is ignoring Rend.
Yeah. Also, his command ability is super good. So pretty much pick 1 friendly model with his command ability until the end of that phase. So this is during the command ability at the start of the battle shock phase until the end of the phase. All friendly Lumineth Realm Lords wholly within 24 of that model are treated of having bravery characteristic of 10.
Ouch.
So as we talked about, if you take Aether Quartz and you used it, you're -1, but you use that, be like, cool, everyone's treated as 10. So you just go, cool, I'm immune.
Yeah.
So if I had a really bad run of endless mortal wounds or anything, I'm like, cool, bravery 10, I won't lose as much. Again, he is really good in combat. He's got a 3-up save, 7 wounds, 6-inch move. He ignores. He just ignores Rend, and just he's be really good in the hero scenarios of just staying on objective and just being hard to shift, especially when you team them up with some of the wardens that I've added in.
Well, between the Light Eltharian and the Stoneheart King, you've got two super durable heroes that are also buff synergy pieces with other parts of the army. The fact that Light Eltharian is going to come in and really support the wardens by at least giving them bravery 10, and they're already durable dudes. That's a nice little combination. Or, as you said, sending a Light of Eltharian off on their own, and because it's already ignoring rend. Is it got a high movement? I feel like it does.
6-inch movement.
Okay,
which is
it's high.
Well, compared to Stoneguard, that's fast.
I was going to say that's literally what I was going to say, is that compared to the rest of your army, that is fast, but it's not that fast. You might be able to keep up, because the radius is 24 inches. If you were running the cavalry, your Dawn Riders, it still would support them quite well, given that Dawn Riders move fast and Mr. Armor Man not so much.
Yeah. But yeah, his rules are super good. He's got just some strong abilities for 220 points. You can't really go wrong. And then, but now I got 30 wardens.
Yes.
So the reason why the 30 wardens are there are generally they're there to be holding onto objective and not moving, or bubble wrapping some of the heroes and making sure people don't get to them. Yeah. Also, they're pretty good in combat. And also they have access to the spell of Protection of Hirsch, from my understanding, because they're wizards, or one of their leaders is a wizard. So cast that spell and let them ignore stuff on 5-ups. Because I don't know if there's a common theme here, but the whole point of this list is I'll shift you, you can't shift me.
And anyone who's learning Lumineth for the first time is going to learn that this army is defensive. Again, we talked about the 300. 300 was able to withstand this huge, battle from Xerxes. Thousands upon thousands of people with, essentially 300 people. If that doesn't scream defense to you, and you're listening to what Liam's describing here, this is an ultra defensive army. And ignoring rend, being able to have bravery 10, being able to re-roll saves, being able to there's a whole bunch of stuff here that is keeping you as a very durable force. You're not like a durable force like a Legions of Nagash or someone who's summoning bodies or regenerating bodies. You are really absorbing as much damage as physically possible through a whole bunch of rules, which is going to be a surprise for a lot of people. Because again, we haven't seen anything like this. People thought OBR was defensive. This is a completely different defense.
Yeah, the OBR that I used to play is very much influenced by this, but doing it better. And I don't know if anyone's realized this, but I'm saving up so many command points. All my abilities and stuff are all about me saving command points, and
because you're not spending them, right? Because you don't need to, right? You got bravery 10 potentially, so you don't need to be spending too much on inspiring presence. All of your abilities are coming inherently either from the battalion, from the regular abilities, from Eumetrica. There's not a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously you're gonna be able to re-roll ones to hit, shooting, and all that good stuff, but you're right, yeah. And I mean, you've got an extra command point here, and you've taken the Hishian Twinstone Endless Spell.
Yeah, so to give you an idea of why I want to save so many command points is because I know how important it is to reroll charges when you need it. Because as we said, my guys aren't piling in that far. They're piling in 1 inch. So I need good charges. So I'll be spending CP to get those good charges, if that makes sense.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you run? Or is that only the elves that can't run?
I can run.
It's the elves that if they're in the formation, they can't run. Is that right?
Yeah. If they're in the formation, they can't run.
That's this. Yeah. So your wardens.
The wardens can't run.
Yeah. So if your wardens are in the shield formation, I can't remember what the exact formation is. But
Shining Company.
The Shining Company. Yeah. You lock that Shining Company in. That forces you to not. You can't run, but you get benefits. So if you are doing that with your wardens, I can see why you'd want to re-roll those charges.
Yeah, so that's why. Saving CP for that. Twin Stones, pretty much extra casting, as in getting my casting buffs up so I can get those good spells out. That's generally the reason why they're there. And for 30 points, it's pretty darn good.
So for 30 points, so what happened? So for 30 points
So summon casting value of 7. Set them up within 6 inches of the caster. When this model is set up, place a d6 beside it, one facing up. Each time a spell is successfully cast by a unit within 12 of this model and not unbound. After the effects of the spell have been resolved, increase the value up by 1, maximum to 6. If a Lumineth Realm Lord attempts to cast a spell while they're within 12 inches of this model before making the casting roll, the player controlling that wizard can say that they will draw power from the twin stones. If they do so, add the value of the dice beside it to the casting roll. So in time, like any of those high casting ones, like 7 and stuff, if I had like 2 or whatever, I'd be like, cool, I'm adding 3 to the roll. Let's go.
Is it just your spells or is it my spells to your opponent?
Any spells.
So it's like Malevolent Maelstrom, but instead of it doing damage with the dice roll, it is now going to be able to, you can draw power from it to make those spells easier to cast.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
Okay. So very similar mechanic if you've used the Malevolent Maelstrom.
For 30 points, I'm not complaining. So yeah.
For 30 points, you can get +1 to cast, +2 to cast, make it harder for your opponent to unbind. 30 points is a no-brainer. That's a great. If I could take that in Hallowheart or any of my cities builds, I would happily take the Twin Stones for 30 points compared to what you get for 30 points elsewhere. Like that's great value. Like the equivalent for me is Quicksilver Swords. So I can do 2 mortal wounds from that, or with those same points, I could be getting +1, +2, +3, +5 to a cast at a critical moment.
Exactly. So yeah, that is my first list. So that's the list that has no allies.
So it comes in at 2,000 points on the dot, 121 wounds, 4 out of 6 leader, 4 battle line, 1 behemoth. You got your 2 artifacts, you got 1 endless spell, and no allies. Pretty solid list. Anything you'd want to say about this particular list before you kind of wrap it up and move to another list?
If you want to look at something like this and you want more speed and you want to stick with Lumineth, you can swap out the Wardens for the Dawn Guard, because you already got 3 battle line from the Stone Guard. So if you were looking at something where you just don't want to do allies, you can swap out for the Dawn Riders, but I'm not a huge fan of the models, so that's why they're not on the list, but they're still a great choice. So for anyone at home who's looking at doing some mountain stuff and you need some more speed, because I don't know if you realize this, but this army is slow.
I was going to say that the Dawn Riders, if you switch them in replace for say the Wardens, it would get you the speed that you're severely lacking, and again might combine really well with the Light of Atharion.
Yeah, so that would be my suggestion for myself. But like, again, I'm not a huge fan of the models. I've kind of gone for rule of cool with these 3 lists, but it's still competitive and still very much get stuffed kind of thing. So yeah.
Cool. So list number 2, I'm going to read it out because there are some similarities, but there's some differences. So I'm going to read out the second list in full. So again, we are Eumetrica. We have the Stone Mage, which has the same build. So the general Almighty Blow, the Hearthstone Amulet, and Entomb. We have the second Stone Mage, which has the Mountain's Gift and Crippling Vertigo. So both the same as the first list. This one does have a Stoneheart King. It does have the Light of Atharion. Again, it's no different to the last list. We do have the introduction of an ally. So we've got the Eidolon of Mathlan, the aspect of the Storm. So this is the combat. This is the combat hero from Idolin Deepkin. I'll get you in a second to explain why, because at first I was a bit confused on why. I had a suspicion on why you had it, but some people are probably scratching their head because even Deepkin players don't really run the Eidolons. You've got 10 Stone Guard with the Mallets. You've got 10 Stone Guard with the Diamond Pick Hammers. You've reduced your Wardens down to 20 as opposed to 30. You've kept it within the battalion, the Temple Battalion. You've lost the additional command point, but you still do have the Twin Stone Endless Spell. So talk me through about maybe how this list is different, and then specifically where the Eidolon of Mathland comes in.
Okay, so if you're a Deacon player, you're probably scratching your head of why I picked an aspect of the Storm as an ally. I actually think he's up there as one of the best heroes in Order, just because he's not a monster. So he actually can get cover. So you can really piss people off with him. So he's got 12-inch move, 12 wounds, 3 up save, and his bravery 10. So he's fast. He's got a good armor save, and he's got a fair amount of wounds, like a fair amount of wounds. He has so anyone listening at home who don't know what Aspect of Storm is, so he's got the Spear of Redemptive Fury, 4 attacks, 2-inch range, 3s, 2s, -2 damage. The Kroll Hook, 4 attacks, 2s, 3s, -1 damage. Storm Shoal, which is his coat, like his massive cloak, 2d6 attacks, 4s, 4s, no rend 1 damage. Now, pretty much he has an ability that's called reroll, called Crashing Upon the Foe. Reroll hit rolls of 1 and add 1 to the damage characteristic of this model's Spear of Repressed Fury if this model made a charge move in the same turn. In addition, this model can charge in the same turn that it made a retreat move. Finally, heal D3 wounds allocated to this model after it makes a charge move. So he's a combat beast. So he's rerolling his So he's rerolling his hit rolls of 1 and adding 1 to a damage characteristic of the spear. So he's hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s.
When he charges.
When he charges. Yeah. Yep. -2, 3 damage on the charge. So that spear is going to knock some heroes out. He has an ability for him for Deepkin armies, but it's also used on himself. And that is reroll wound rolls of 1 for friendly Ideneb Deepkin units that are within 9 inches of this model. So all his attacks are now rerolling wound rolls of 1. So now that's Spear of Fury, 4 attacks, 3s rerolling 1s on the charge, 2s rerolling 1s, -2, 3 damage on the charge. So, and the cool thing about him, for anyone wondering of why even more, he can fly.
Yeah.
He's 12-inch move and he can fly. So you can just fly around.
Which is a big limitation on the Lumineth. I was going to say Deepkin. The Lumineth is that you do really lack movement and speed. You lack flying outside of techless. I think the Stone Mages they can fly, or there's an ability to fly. There's some
There's
flying.
an ability to make them fly.
Yeah, like majority of your army doesn't fly. So having, and I think, offline we talked about this, and I'd said that this reminds me of why I take a Phoenix in my Cities of Sigmar, having the ability to zip around the board, to be able to retreat and do damage and do obviously different types of damage, but that movement is so important, and being able to move that into combat where it's needed, or to steal an objective that gets left behind, or there's so many things you can do with that super speed.
Yeah, so he's really good at just sniping little characters, because he has this thing called Pulled into the Death. So at the start of the combat phase, you can pick an enemy hero with a wound characteristic of less than 8 that is within 3 of this model, and subtract 1 from hit rolls for that hero for the rest of the combat phase. So you're just pretty much drowning people in water, and he can just go in and just wipe them out. So he's very much a good controlling piece in combat, because you can go, cool, you're at -1, so I don't have to deal with you. And then you can just do the other combats that you have in as well. So he's really good, and he's also a very good distraction piece, because a lot of people will see him and try and aim at him, and then you have the Stone Guard and everyone slowly moving up, being like, cool, we're ready to mess things up. So
see, I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking people would ignore the Aspect of the Storm, because I think a lot of people by now have played Deepkin, and you don't see much of the Aspect of the Storm. So you probably think maybe to yourself, oh, they're not eels, I don't have to worry about it. And this dude's little zipping around the board, doing damage, doing its thing, while people focus on that Battle Cattle. So there's probably two minds, right? Either this guy's going to be completely ignored, or it's going to be the distraction kind of effects that people keep attacking, while the rest of your force, which is ignoring Rend 2, it's re-rolling saves, is slowly marching up the board, pushing people off objectives. So it's a rather win-win, and this model has dropped a lot of points over the last 2 years. I think it initially started at 440. It's now down to 360. So, but I will challenge you to say that the best hero in order is the Celestin Prime. But that's not an option for you.
No, which I'm not going to lie is refreshing, because this, fun fact, guys, Lumineth's the first order army that don't ally in with Stormcast.
Yeah. I imagine Tyrion will be able to ally with them, but yeah, there's no Stormcast allies here. So
to give you an idea, right? So the Aspect of the Storm, he's great just because for 360 points, I honestly was expecting him to go down more because no one's using him. But the reason why you don't see him in Deepkin I just want to quickly say, the reason why you don't see him in Deepkin is because the points in Deepkin are so different from every unit that, for example, Sharks go down to 100 points, so they're easily like auto include, and same with the eels. So that's why you don't see him in Deepkin, because in Deepkin there's more cheaper stuff. If that makes sense.
Yeah, people double down with the eels. I think that's where you start seeing people just realizing instead of having thralls, it's just better to have more eels. Early on in Age of Sigmar, I did play a whole bunch against the aspect of the storm. Ben Spinetti would run it many times, and it was a great little piece at 440. So at 360, and its rules hasn't changed. It is a good ally choice, and I think it complements your builds quite well. I don't know if I would take the aspect of the storm in Hayden's elf build. I don't think it works as nearly as well as what you're doing with this. But I think thinking outside of the box, I think this is a nice addition, something to consider.
I ran an aspect of the storm when I played Sylvaneth Winterleaf when the first book. I don't know if you remember that, because that was one of my first CanCon lists I was going to take. And I had huge success with him because that was when he was at 400 points or something. He was at
440. It was 440. It was quite, because it was much higher than even the ally pool to begin with. It was like Manfred level at the time.
Yeah. So I've had a go with him, and he was hugely successful, where he actually was doing more damage. He was more consistent than Durthu for sure. And Durthu is like a damage dealer. So
yeah, but Durthu is extremely inconsistent. You either get Durthu or Derpthu.
Yeah. Well, with Idolon, you know what you're expecting.
Do you think, and maybe this is a question that the listeners might be thinking about, is, in the Deepkin, you've got the aspect of the Storm, which is which one have you got? You've got Storm, which is the combat one, and then you got aspect of the Sea, which is the spellcaster. Do you think that given you've got the Twin Stones, which is again a spell-based endless spell, do you think that the Sea has any place in this list, or do you think that the Sea is just not as good as a Storm as an inclusion?
The Sea buffs more Deepkin than friendly. So the reason why I don't go for Sea is because he's very like Deepkin driven, if that makes sense. The aspect of Storm, he's good because he can go on his own, while the aspect of the Sea would literally be standing there just casting spells for himself. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's literally why I wanted to ask you this, because the Sea you don't even see at all. The Sea is okay, but yes, the spellcasting potential of the Sea isn't that damaging. So even in a Deepkin list, when you've got the aspect of the Sea, it's not like this huge, massive threat in the spellcasting pool. So I don't think it's an inclusion in that perspective. But to what you're doing here, which is like this combat beat stick that can kind of go out and do its own thing, the Storm definitely plays that role better than the Sea can.
Yeah, and I don't know if anyone's realized this, but this list, these lists, they're not all about spellcasting. Like the spellcasting is like a nice bonus.
No, you haven't doubled down on spellcasting like Hayden had in some of his builds, because this style of army, the stone king, stone mage, stone guard,
everything
is not reliant on spells, nor is it, it's not pushing damage out via spells, nor does it need spells to buff their people up to be amazing. That's already inherent in the War Scroll, the Battalion, and the Eumetrica abilities.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Cool.
Again, like if I wanted to change something with this list, I would have probably swapped out. I don't really need the Wardens in this list, so I could have swapped them out for more Stone Guard and just go 3 Stone Guard to lower my drops.
Or even the Dawn Riders we just talked about, because then you have 2.
I can't do Dawn Riders because they're not fulfilled battle line.
Of course, because you've only got 2 battle line choices. That's right. I was thinking you still had 3 Stone Guard. No, so we've only got 2 Stone Guard, so you need a battle line choice. So you've either got to get more Stone Guard or you've got to stick with the Wardens.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the only thing I would be. And again, this is like, you just play and toy with these lists. Like these lists here, the theory behind it is that what I wanted to show with these lists that we're showing here, like this one here and then one after this, is that Deepkin, even though they're the only ally in for Lumineth, they fill in a role really well for these kind of builds. Like they're really good.
Yep.
So, yeah. So that's my second list.
maybe high level, how does this one compare to the first list? Like, is there a difference in play style? Is there a difference in projection of power? Yeah. Well, like how would you compare the two so far?
If I was going to go into a tournament and go in it to win it and be top of the table, I would pick the first one.
Because you've got more of the Stone Guard and it synergizes better?
More of the Stone Guard, it synergizes, and it's more of a headache for everyone because I feel like people would rage after turn 2. So yeah, while the other one, there's less Stone Guard. So there's like, look, because we have 121 wounds here, and I think the other one we only have like 100.
Yeah, the first list is 121. The second list is 103. Yeah. So there's a difference not only of 20 odd wounds, but it's also the amount of ignoring rend, re-rolling saves. So really, you're probably getting an extra 40 wounds when you think about it, with Math Hammer applied.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why the other one statistically is better because durability wise, you've added in an extra 40 plus wounds. So yeah.
No, that's great. And to be honest, Liam, if I was to face you in a tournament, I would be much more concerned with list 1 as opposed to list 2. List 2, I think, is certainly an easier battle. But those Stone Guard, especially having 3 big blocks of Stone Guard, or 3 units of Stone Guard, I think could be a headache and makes me question where I need to put my projection of power in order to handle these bodies.
Yeah, exactly. But this next list though is a bit more, I would say, more competitive than the second list, but it's a very obvious list, if that makes sense. So we'll quickly run through it.
Cool. So list number 3, again, Lumineth Realm Lords, Eumetrica. So what have we got? We've got the Stone Mage as the general, Almighty Blow, Hearthstone Amulet, Entombed, same. Stone Mage, Mountain Gift, and Crippling Vertigo, same. We have Stoneheart King, same. Light of Atharian, same. We then have 10 Stone Guard with the Stone Mallets. We have 10 Stone Guard with the Diamond Pick. We have 20 Wardens with the Protection of Hish. We then bring in a different set of allies. So we bring in 6 of the Morsar Guard. So this is the offensive, not defensive build.
Yep.
Correct? Yep. So you got Ishlan Guard and you got your Morsar Guard. So we've got the offensive eel lists. Eels. We then bring in the Battalion Temple. We bring in the Twinstone Endless Spell, coming in at 1970 with 115 wounds. So Liam, talk me through, I guess, 1, why are we going eels? 2, how does this list differ than what we've seen in the other 2 builds?
So this list here, so you got the same heroes as the first list, pretty much same loadout. You got less Stone Guards again, but the Morsar, again, they fly and they're a smaller base size, so they can actually fit in gaps a little bit easier. And they can go off and do their own thing. So they're very if there's a particular character that you need to snipe, those bases will fit a lot easier compared to a Aspect of the Storm. The Aspect of Storm is really good when it comes to taking advantage of people making silly mistakes. The Morsar is pretty much going to fit in that role of we can fly, we're fast, and we'll take out whatever. They pretty much, if there's some really annoying chaff and the Stone Guard don't want to trend through it, the Morsar Guard will go in and then just and also since everyone has dealt with Morsar Guard in a competitive level, you'll see people targeting them more than the Aspect of the Storm. So those allies there, and they've got a fair amount of wounds. And yeah, I reckon this one here is pretty much it's one of those lists that I would take to a tournament to do well, because the Morsar Guard definitely fit the role of speed over the thing. But again, I would swap the Wardens for more Stone Guard if I want to. But for this list though, since the Wardens are durable and the Morsar Guard are a bit of a glass cannon, you need the Wardens.
So I guess you're bringing the Morsar Guard not just for the speed and the flying, but also the mortal wounds that you do on the charge. So you do that little zap at the start of combat. The once per game zaps that can do a whole bunch of more. Is it D3 mortal wounds per eel?
It's mortal wounds for every 3 up, and I think on a 6 it's a D3.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of mortal wounds.
It's huge.
Yeah, I just remember people Ken Van Schip just doing 10, 15 mortal wounds from a zap. And all you need is one model.
So you roll a dice for each model. For each 3-up, you do a mortal wound, but each 6-up does D3. So that's why you always saw 9, because you have more chances of 6s.
Yeah, correct. So again, similar question I had to the aspect of the Storm/Sea is, do you see a reason, or is there a logic behind why you take Morsar Guard as opposed to the Ishalan Guard, which we know are the defensive eel build?
Yeah, so the reason why I've gone, because the thing is, there's no point of having the defensive eels because this army is already defensive. Yeah. You need something that's offensive, and that's what the Morsar fill the guard out. So they're extra 30 points each. There's an extra 60 points compared to Ishlan, but you're filling that role of, we need some mortal wound. Like, there's mortal wound output within this Lumineth army, just little bits. Like, it's not a lot. But having something just to do a quick zap at a hero or a unit, that's what they do.
Yeah, and that was what I wanted to draw out, was that if you want to go the defensive build, you're probably better off investing those points into more Stone Guard, into a Spirit of the Mountain, for the same amount of points. Yes, you don't get the speed that the eels bring, but it's a role that you probably don't need filling because you've already got so much defense already inherently built within the allegiance, within the sub-allegiance, within the units you're choosing.
Yeah, exactly.
So why double down on defense when you could just do it naturally and get more stuff because they're going to be synergized with keywords?
Pretty much, yeah. It just made way more sense for me putting the Morsar in. But as I said, this would be a list that I would... This kind of list you need to tweak a lot. So if you scroll back up, right? Like, one thing I would definitely do in this kind of list is I would drop Light of Ethereon, for example, and add more Stone Guard within those 220 points. But this is the thing though, these kind of lists with allies and stuff, you need to tweak because the allies are taking up a fair bit of points, and Lumineth are expensive points wise and probably kit wise as well, since the range isn't out yet. But you will definitely see, I will tell you now, for Lumineth, you will see a lot of Deepkin being allied in. And this is one clear example of why, because they fill the role of flying, speed, and just damage output.
Do you think there's a space for other Deepkin allies like the turtle, like the sharks, like the thrall, like other characters?
Sharks, yes, because they're 100 points for freaking each. So if you can literally max out your allies for sharks and have a heaps amount of wounds. But the sharks are only really good with an Achillean King around them, or Volturnus. The reason why you would go for something like Eels or Aspect of Storm is because they buff within themselves. They are their own thing. They can go off their own tangent stuff, while you got the Lumineth that are very we're very much going to stay within this circle. And the Deepkin are no, we're going to go off and deal with this threat or deal with that threat. So yeah, that's why I don't really think there's many others. Like the turtle, again, the turtle's a buff piece for Deepkin.
It has some damage output. It does have some damage output. Again, it flies, but it's certainly a much better Deepkin buff piece, especially in combination of thralls.
Yeah, you wouldn't run Volturnus in the Lumineth thing because he's about buffing people. That's it. Tirecaster, again, same thing. Soulscry is about teleporting the Deepkin unit. So, and
I was literally about to raise that, Liam, was that for anyone who has played against Idoneth Deepkin and you know about the sideboarding eels that come from and kind of hit you as opposed to running up the board, that's not coming from the eels themselves. That's coming from the hero in the Tidecaster. And if you've ever had to fight last, or if you've ever had to shoot the closest model, that is all coming from the Deepkin Allegiance. So you don't get to tap into that. But what you do get with the Morsar Guard or the Eidolon of the Storm is going to be a flying combat beat stick that's going to be able to do mortal wounds. It's just going to be a general threat priest across the board.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why the Morsar are more important. For example, if you were going to go full damage output, for example, go something along Hayden's route where they're not as durable kind of thing, with Dawn Riders and stuff, you kind of want to go for then Ishlan Guard.
Yeah.
If that makes sense? Because the Dawn Riders, they're not as durable compared to Wardens and Stone Guard.
No.
So you go for that, right? if you're going to go around that route, you would then go for Ishlan to fill the role of annoying defense.
Yes, yeah. You would have a flying support, because the Dawn Riders are going to be outside of the defensive bubble. So by providing, and you know what, even if you didn't have, maybe you don't double down on the eels like Liam has, but I think there's value in bringing in a shark, bringing in a unit of 3 eels. Doubling down and getting 6 is great, but I think even having like some flying threat that can be on the side. Sharks are wonderful, and they do things on their own, and they just keep dropping in points. So I wouldn't overlook those.
They'll be 50 points next GHB the way they're going.
Reminds me of Demigryph Knight. Demigryph Knight started at 220 points. They kept going down 160 points. No one was really taking them, and then they finally rewrote the War Scroll, and people love them. But yeah, I think sharks, eels, the Eidolon. I think you've shown some interesting allies that people may not be thinking about. I'd love to see the conversions as well. I'd love to see some people convert and make what does a hish shark or a hish eel look like? I think that's very, do people use like the cloak as light from the from the Eidolon? Show me your conversions.
It's going to be interesting, and honestly, and the cool thing about Lumineth is it's a brand new army. And we're expecting new stuff, not next year, maybe the year after. We don't know. Don't quote me on this. Do not message me about this. But when we do get the new stuff, there will get more allies. So, like, for example, if you read the book and stuff, Morathi gets mentioned, Sigma gets mentioned and stuff. Like, it's just because Teclis doesn't like Morathi and Sigma. He's gone off on his own tangent. So maybe, like, when Tyrion does come out, Doors of Cain might open up some stuff. Like, the book never... Yeah.
So for anyone who hasn't read the lore just yet, just like protect Liam's DMs, and he just like, Liam being quoted that, he's getting like there's 7 different elves coming through. So we do know that the elves are a part of the Pantheon. So they're a part of Sigmar's Pantheon. They did work together at some point in time. We know Teclis, Tyrion, Morathi, and Malekith or Malarian. It's Malarian now.
It's Malarian now, yeah.
Yeah, Malarian. Yeah. I always get them too mixed up. They all work together to banish and to hold Slaanesh, in that kind of realm between light and shadow. So they have worked together. It's probably more that it's Tyrion's side as opposed to Teclis that is probably more of the. And we haven't seen that part of the island. So we know that there's what 8 great nations, 10 great nations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've seen half of the great nations. We haven't seen Tyrion's side of the great nation. So who knows what comes from the ally pool, what comes from the unit selection, how the Tyrion and Teclis will work together. But we do know that it's going to come, right? Like it's blindly obvious. Tyrion is
it's coming, because like to give you an idea, I was very disappointed when I saw that Daughters couldn't be allied in, or the Lumineth couldn't be allied into Daughters, because I was very I would honestly, I was like, Stoneguard would be amazing for Daughters. And
I assume Phoenix Temple would be able to be brought in, to be honest. So people are like, Seeds of Sigmar. I thought maybe your Phoenixes and your Phoenix Guard will be able to be brought in. But I think that maybe that's more of a Tyrion thing as opposed to a Teclis thing. I
feel like Teclis is just a dick that doesn't like anyone else. So like he's just gone off and done his own thing. But it's to give you an idea though, right? Like as you guys saw in these lists, I didn't write anything with Teclis because 1, I'm not a huge fan of the model. 2, his 600, how many points? 660?
660.
660. He takes up so much, and the army is already so expensive points wise. So like it is super expensive.
I'm looking at some of your units, and I think you got some pretty good value for money when you look at what you get.
I have to, but like they're good value because I have to take a certain nation to make them cheap.
But for 660, I think there is potential of a trap. I think some people are going to build around a Teclis, and it's going to be super strong. Some people aren't going to get the most value out of, or it's going to be a key threat, and people like Carriage and Overlords are just going to shoot that person off the board, and you're going to lose him in turn 1 when those boats fly high and then just burninate Teclis.
Yeah, it's very much, I didn't write any because he's so expensive to write a list around. Also, he doesn't really work well. Like, even though he's part of the book and they're with him, he doesn't work well with the mountain guys. The mountain guys work in their own synergy, as we just saw with my list. Like you run double Stone Mage, you run the named King. You can have some more fun with this list. You can even, if you want, you can drop the Wardens and add an extra freaking cow. Yeah. If you want some more like
I would like to see. In fact, I might even get Ben on this show because I would like to see what that 4 cow list looks like. I think that
it's a thing. If anyone is following Ben Spinetti on Twitter or anything like that, his hobby projects have been next level. He's to give you an idea, he's running a whole freaking night list of OBR, and I'm like, that's not a thing. He just goes, nah, I'll make it a thing. And I was like, you're the same guy that made 4 sharks a thing, so kudos to you. So he will make 4 cows a thing when it comes out, and he'll probably take out a tournament.
He did put a Charybdis in his Deepkin list as well, but this is not the Ben Spinetti show. This is the Liam Burnett-Blue show talking about Lumineth Realm Lords. I want to ask you a couple of quick questions before we bring it home. Really rapid-fire questions. You won't need your rule book, Liam. How do you win? How do you win the game here? Like, what is the strength, or not the strength, but like, what's the strategy or what's the loose game plan that this particular list will apply to win their games?
So, let's just go with the first list. Because that's probably the easiest one to explain. Is you're pretty much running in 3 different bubbles. You're running with a light of Ethereon with the Wardens, and then you have a Stone Mage running with a small unit of Stone Guard. And then you have the other 2 Stone Guard with the King and the Stone Mage going off doing their own thing. So there's 3 parts on the list, and you synergize them all in one hit. You pretty much keep your buffs, and you're pretty much playing, the best way to describe it, it's pretty much like how I used to run Kern of Hunter's Scythes, right? So very much, I didn't go full alpha with Kern of Hunter's span like things. I pretty much like held them together and slowly moved forward, because I wanted to reroll saves and hit you back harder. That's pretty much how you're doing it. You want your opponent to come to you and stuff. And since the game's kind of gone full melee, except for Caradron Overlords, most people will come to you and you will win that fight, if that makes sense. Like, I can't really think of an army that will completely demolish you in combat. The only army that I do have issues with is Seraphon. Because Seraphon got some shooting, like really good shooting. They got Croak and stuff. Your general will stay alive, and you will definitely, you'll hit well. It's just like the things that they don't have a ward save.
I was literally about to ask you. That was literally the question about to come out of my mouth, right? Because I'm thinking, right, like, how do I beat this list? You ignore Rend -1. In this particular build, you're ignoring Rend -2. So the only way that I can really take out your dudes consistently is going to be through mortal wounds. And correct me if I'm wrong, you have very little, if any, mortal wound damage prevention.
The only one is protection of Hish, and all my generals and my heroes. And
your Stone Guard don't get any mortal wounds.
They don't get any. But you got to remember as well, though, those guys are 2 wounds each.
So your unit of 10 is 20 wounds. So you've got to be putting out a lot of mortal wounds.
You have to output a lot. Like, Purple Sun will give them a bad time. I think that's the one end of the spell that I'm scared of. But
sounds
again,
like I need to bring my Hallowheart elemental cyclone out.
Hallowheart is a nightmare for me. But that's the thing, though. But you got to remember that list I built with all the Stone Guard and stuff, they are 2 wounds a pop for 100 points each. And they're doing a fair bit. But if they get into combat with you, you pretty much will go GG.
Yeah.
Because they're rerolling saves, they're going to hit you harder. And also, that's kind of why
they're pushing you off the objective.
And that's why you start looking at allies. So, for example, look at Morsa Guard so they can get to the mortal wound threat and do mortal wounds to them. So, for example, Croak, right? You start throwing like the Deepkin to them, be like, cool, let's get to that threat. And of course, Croak's going to be like, hell no, you're going to get away from me, and start aiming at the Deepkin, not at your Stone Guard. So when their Stone Guard do get to the point of being to charge well and stuff, you will be doing the damage. So that's why.
Can you even get into the Croak?
For me, for Stone Guard, no, because that's why you need flying.
Yeah, because I was going to say because Lord Croak with his Ashlith Bearer and his Saurus guy, his whatever the other hero is that normally buffs him up. Then you've got your salamanders or your skinks. Usually skinks are a screen. Salamanders are in the sky for Starborn. To eventually get to them, like one, you've got to be able to get there, right? So let alone putting the salamanders down just to block them off. But two, to then get through, it'll take you 4 turns.
To give you an idea as well, with salamanders, I'm not too scared of because they've Rend 2 and I ignore it.
Yes, yeah, but it's croaking your build that would
Croak. If I can take out the salamanders and skinks and just leave Croak, kind of thing, like because the big thing with skinks is their skink priest that gives them mortal wound output. I can't get to that, but if I can take out most of the skinks for like trying to do it, then that's when I'm pretty good. But again, this is very much like the annoying part is about this army is that models aren't out yet. So it's a lot of proxying and stuff. So I'll be proxying heaps with like my daughters and stuff because it'll be the same base size. But I am the reason why I would say if you're going to go to mountain route, you have to double down on Stone Guard because point per point, they are the most efficient.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've raised a really valid point with the flying allies, whether it's going to be the aspect of a storm, whether it's the Morsar Guide. I think there's going to be a couple of things, whether it's going to be the Hallowheart bubble, whether it's a Lord of Change at the back, whether it's going to be Lord Croak, whether it's going to be some other type of supercaster. I think it's going to be hard for you to tap into them without a flying hero, and you're not going to take Techless in this particular build. So something to keep in mind. Or you just know that's going to be a bad matchup for you, and you build for the rest of the armies. And the Stone Guard, the Stone Mages, the Stone King, they're all wonderful selections that are going to cause a lot of people pain.
Like the Stone King, he's pretty much an army by himself. Like he just goes, "Cool, charge me, I'll hit you back harder." Like, and then you have the Stone Mage that's behind him, being like, "Yeah, you're on 0 damage. You do whatever you want."
And I think it's really cool because a lot of people are still they're not comfortable with the double turn. They're not comfortable applying strategy, offensive and defensive when they're playing the game. So at least this type of build is preparing to get to be attacked. And if you don't set up your charge appropriately or you prepare for that, you can embrace as much as do damage. So it's a nice little complimentary for people. I like it. Obviously, you haven't played it yet.
No,
actually, have you been able to?
I've been studying uni and stuff, so I've been studying this book left, right, and center. But I've been watching carefully of how people have been playing it. And I've been speaking to Hayden a lot because Hayden's been practicing heaps. Because he's pretty much got all the models that he needs.
Yeah, I mean, his elf sides are already out. Like as you've mentioned, as we record this, folks, the models aren't out yet. I think they come out in August. September. I think it's September they said, somewhere around there. So
we're expecting either early September or late August. But at the same time, though, we're supposed to be expecting. I don't even know when doors are coming out. I've given up on that. That's another day to talk about.
That's the daughter show. Guardians come out in September.
But I do know that it is. They are coming out. It's just more for the fact that from my reading of the book, and every time I've read a book in a battle time, and you know this for a fact, that I always point out what's the busted shit, like being like, this thing's going to cause issues and stuff. And I can tell you right now that Stone Guard, when they actually come out, the models, you'll see people buying a lot. Because I think people bought a lot of the Lumineth box because they think, Dawn Riders are amazing stuff. But I think the mountain guys are where the real threat is.
Yeah.
And
I would even go as far to say is that I wouldn't be surprised to see a second FAQ come out when that comes out. So I wouldn't be surprised, once people start playing with the Stone Guard, there might be a second FAQ. But because they are the stronger build. I don't know if they're busted. Maybe they'll save it for a points adjustment in December like they did in 2019.
I'm expecting the Stone Guard to go up in points to 120.
I think so too. I think they're for 100 points for the 5, 10 wounds, and a whole bunch of stuff. I think they're too cheap. I think they're closer to Phoenix Guard points. Short, certainly somewhere 220.
Now, 140.
Phoenix Guard's 160. Phoenix Guard does have the Phoenix Guard does have the 4+ additional save, including mortal wounds. But I think 120, 140 could be somewhere. So before you go buy 1 million Stone Guard, I'd probably say to pause, or at least don't double down, or know that it could go up.
Like, I would say they'll go up, and what you'll probably be losing out in your list is Light of Ethereon. Like that list that I wrote, I would probably lose Light of Ethereon. And then like, cool. But I would also say that they will go up to, but the thing is that the reason why they're so good is because the Legion's ability and rules with the synergy makes sense. Like, you can't raise.
It's Hagnar. It's literally Hagnar. Hagnar, you couldn't fix Hagnar without rewriting the War Scroll because Hagnar has no points.
Yeah.
That was the problem with Hagnar.
And I think everyone who's followed me carefully has realized that I pick everything that has the 3 points that can't be fixed and just take the crap out of it.
I mean, Petrifix Elite, the same thing. Like, how do you fix Petrifix? You can't point it. It come from the rules.
But you're a
well, yeah, like it had to come from like an errata or a War Scroll rewrite, as opposed to, we'll just increase the points of Petrifix Elite. Well, there's no points.
To give you an idea, though, I would be very surprised. I wouldn't be shocked if they make the ignoring rend you can't run.
Okay.
Because at the moment, right, these guys can run.
Yeah.
So,
all right, well, I think the point is,
I'm not going to give GW ideas on how to fix it already.
No, and I don't want to go down this rabbit hole too much, because I don't want to say that they will get, I don't want to cause doubt where there's potentially no doubt. They are good rules. I think they are at risk of going up in points. They are at risk of being FAQ'd with an adjustment, but they're not crazy broken type builds. I think they're strong. Right. I think people are going to be concerned about it because they've never played against anything like it. But are they completely busted? No, I don't think they're Gaunt Summoner, summon 50 wounds for free once per battle busted.
Yeah. Another thing as well that I'll be interested to see is if they fix or see if they will change the unnamed mountain dude. Because I have a funny feeling that was a mistake. Adding him the hero keyword.
I mean, if they're not going to give the Black Coach a hero keyword, you might not get one.
It'll just be interesting, just because it'll be more interesting builds. Because at the moment, right, what they've done is they made it obvious, being like, you have to take the named king. Like, you have to take.
If you want the hero.
Yeah, that's it really. But like, as I said, it's an awesome army, awesome models. If you're interested in the Stone Garden stuff, find a Lumineth Realm Lords book on buy, sell, swap, and grab it. Or if your local store has one, grab it. It's gorgeous. Because the cool thing is the front cover is the Mountain Dudes. So if you like the Mountain Dudes, that's actually the only thing that made me buy this edition, was because the army part I like is the Mountain. They are cool. I can't wait to grab them and play heaps of games with them, and build my elf collection to the point where my partner is going to kill me. So yeah, all these boxes here are all my Warhammer. So
at least she's playing. So at least she's painting. At least so you've got some type of excuse.
She's excited now that she's living with her teacher, so she's going to be painting a lot more often. So she's going to break Twitter again. So
all right, well, I look forward to welcoming her on the next episode of Down Under Sigmar. Liam, this has been awesome. I'm glad we got to record this. And now we have both, elf fans. We have the Hayden version, which is the doubling down on the elves. We have the Liam version, which is doubling down on the stone dudes, whether it's the stone mage, the stone
elf,
stone guard. You're doubling down on the mountain king. So either way, no matter what you want to build, or you want to find something in the middle, I think we've got two really good, robust types of builds. So Liam, people know where to find you. I'm not going to give you like the little plug that you normally get. If people want to find Liam, he's in his little description. You know where Liam is. He's on Twitter. He's in my Discord. He's annoying people wherever the internet is on. But this is really cool. I actually really look forward to playing you and seeing this list. I think this is going to cause me pain.
It's going to be definitely on the painting table. At the moment, since they're not out yet, I'll be working on my daughters and my OBR. But when they do come out, they will be on the table real quick, because the paint scheme I got for them is super quick and easy. So yeah.
Sweet. All right, Liam, thank you again, mate. Good chat as always.
As always. Always a good chat. Take it easy, guys.
Mate. Peace. Bye. G'day. I hope you enjoyed that video and you're left with some new ideas. One of the biggest ways you can contribute to AOS Coach is by liking the video you just watched and leaving a comment in the comment section. This lets YouTube know this is a good video and it should recommend it to other hobbyists. If you'd also like to support the channel even further like these bloody legends, go check out AOS Coach on Patreon. Otherwise, don't forget your triumph.